Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nations SH Monsterarts King Ghidorah. This is from a line of Japanese import figures that have been covering a lot of different properties. This line is normally referred to in other lines as Figuarts. They've covered a lot of Dragon Ball Z and things like that. They're known for making hyper-articulated figures of a lot of famous Japanese characters. And their Monsterarts subline covers the Godzilla films, which, if you've watched my other reviews, you know that is a soft spot for me. I love the Godzilla movies. I am a huge fan. And I figured, seeing that today, as I'm recording this, hopefully I'll be able to get the video up same day. It is the 21st of December, 2012, meaning today was supposed to be the day of the Mayan apocalypse. And seeing as so far it hasn't happened, I say we look forward to the next great apocalypse, that when King Ghidorah destroys the world. Don't believe me? It's coming. Just trust me. Now, I wish I knew more. I'm not exactly sure where the line splits, what's Bandai, what's Tamashii Nations. I really don't know where the collaboration exists on that. If somebody knows, please enlighten me. I'd love to know what the difference is. But as you'd see in some of my other videos, Bandai did a lot of vinyl Godzilla figures. I have quite a few of them. It's been something they've done since the 70s, I believe. So it's kind of just been a tradition to keep putting out these vinyl figures. But this is the first real step up I've seen them do in a long time, and I am thoroughly impressed so far. Now, I picked up two of these guys. I picked up King Ghidorah here, and I picked up a Godzilla, which I will review separately. And the prices range on these guys considerably. King Ghidorah here, if you were to buy him completely new, he runs about $160, $170 on Amazon. I got very lucky. I found one on Amazon in the scratch and dent section, which was actually just some minor box damage, which I can't find on the box. I do not see anything. My Godzilla, which was supposed to be a completely new figure, actually had a worse condition box than the King Ghidorah. And that's not saying it was in bad shape. So, really, I got lucky. I paid considerably less than the retail price of this figure. And as you can see, I have him on a different set than I normally do because he's enormous. He is a gigantic, gigantic figure, especially with his enormous golden wings here. Just as a quick size comparison before we get into the nuts and bolts of this review, if I was to bring in the vinyl version that was released in America, you can see how insignificant he looks next to this thing. He's just tiny and wimpy. He looks like a toy. He really does look like a toy next to this amazing piece. Alright, so enough background story and talking about it. Let's get into King Ghidorah and see exactly what he has to offer. Now I'm going to start off with this guy on Articulation because that is probably the greatest asset of this figure line and the greatest detriment to some degree to King Ghidorah here. He has a ton of it, and looking at him, you can kind of see where it is in some parts, but other parts are very, very well hidden. And as opposed to my normal review style, we'll start from the bottom up. Here we have ball-jointed feet, which has a good range of motion. He kind of has another ball joint here. I guess you'd call it the ankle. So that can turn, it can rotate, it can pivot, which is great for getting him into different poses. He has a double-jointed knee, but it is not very articulated. You don't get a whole lot of motion out of it. Now, a lot of these joints are very stiff, and I think a lot of this articulation was more to the effect of, this was a character played by a man in a suit. This movie came out in 1991. They hadn't even attempted to make a full CG Godzilla film by then. I mean, they still do it with puppets and rubber suits in Japan. I think more out of tradition than anything else. But there's not a whole lot of articulation in the actual costume, so it makes sense. King Ghidorah doesn't really use his knees all that much anyway. He has kind of a ball-jointed hip, so you can go in and out, forward and back, fairly hindered, which, once again, as long as you can get him into a good pose, it's fine. You could probably get it further than I'm going, but I really just don't want to break this guy. He has a ball-jointed upper torso, which is very hindered. You really don't get much out of it. You get a little forward and back, a little rotation, just barely anything at all out of it. You come back here, he has his dual tails, as is trademark to the character, and Here we get a ton of ball joints all through this tail. It's fully posable. So we start about here. We have a segment here, here. So let's count it off. 1 segment, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm pretty sure we got 15 individual segments here on this tail. So it gives it an incredible range of motion. You can just get so much out of it. Side to side, up and down, any way you want. Because he has 2 tails, you could pose them both in a billion different ways. Unfortunately, these tail joints are a little loose. Some of these joints are very tight. These tail joints seem to be very loose. So he doesn't really hold a pose as well. You can see I'm just kind of putting it up and it drops. In the movies, they kind of just puppeteered the tails. They had a wire on the end of them. They kind of just flailed them around. That works well enough for me. Now, one of the problems I've heard a lot of people complain about with this figure are the wings, specifically the articulation up here. He has a little hinge, so you can go back and forward. You can kind of get a little tilt out of it. It's a very convoluted joint. It's a very strange joint. You can kind of get a little up and down as well. Now, a lot of people have complained, even just getting him out of the box, that this joint has been broken. I think I'm okay. It sticks up a little bit too much here in the front, and they both kind of do that, one worse than the other. I think I'm alright. I've heard to only handle it by down here, very close to the body. So that's what I'm doing. I'm being very gentle with it. But so far, so good. I think my wings are alright. Getting into the heads, he has 3 necks, 3 heads, but they all have the same articulation. They're all like the tail. You got a bunch of ball joints. Up here around the neck, you have kind of a softer piece, a collar that just covers the ball joint here. So that's not an individual segment here. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segments, and then the head. So we have a lot of segments there, a lot of great ball joints giving you a full range of motion on these snake-like heads. Then the head itself, of course, is connected on its own ball joint. You could rotate it side to side, pivot it around. The mouth opens. Now the mouth itself appears to also be on a ball joint because not only does it hinge, it also rotates, which is pretty useless because that wouldn't really happen, but it's there. But you get a really good range of motion in that mouth. And then if I am careful, you get a vague amount of articulation on that tongue. You can actually move it around. Really, really cool. Definitely a neat, highly articulated figure. Now, unfortunately, you pay a bit of a price for all these ball joints because some of them don't want to stay in their spot. Some of them will pop in and out of their joints with a very satisfying, a literal pop. You could hear it. Sounds good, sounds like a good ball joint should. Some of these ball joints just don't want to stay, and you can kind of see it. You can see there's a bit of a gap here, and a bit of a gap here, and here on him. He just has a few joints that just don't want to stay in place. I heard a lot of people saying out of the box as well, they had the ball joint popped off on their center head. Now my center head has been fine so far, but these 2 heads like to pop off, as does this back tail here. The end of it likes to come off. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, I must say. Kind of a flaw with this figure, but as long as it's something that's fixable and I can put them back together, and let's face it, once he's on display, I'm not going to mess with him as much, and they probably will be just fine. I wouldn't call it a minor complaint, but it's definitely a downside to this figure, but nothing that's going to make me hate it. So now that we've gone through all that articulation, let's go through the detail on this guy. He's very beautifully sculpted. Each one of these scales is very, very nice looking. Now the paint on him is very simple. He's just a solid gold, but it's a beautiful gold. Here on the wing, it has that very nice foily look. There's a very cool sheen to it. You could almost just see reflections picked up in it. Just a beautiful, beautiful paint job. And the scales, like I said, there's not a whole lot of things to say about it, but they are very nicely done. The ends of his tails, these club-like ends, I think somebody called them a rug beater, they just look vicious. The spikes are amazingly done. It's just really cool. That just looks so painful. On the necks, he has that kind of serpentine underbelly thing going on, and then the normal scales up around the sides. On the head, he has these massive horns on top of the head and on the side here. One of the big characteristics of the Heisei era King Ghidorah, which this is, which means the Ghidorah from the 90s, or the one movie he was in the 90s, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. He had these spikes on the side. In other versions, they've changed it. Sometimes it's hair, sometimes a different style of spike. But this makes it very much that version of the character. He has a row of spikes going down each neck, which are a little bit rubbery, so they can stand up to some abuse, which is good because you're going to have to kind of manhandle them a bit to get those necks popped on and off, or on mostly. His eyes are these beautiful yellow cat eyes in there. It looks very sinister, very cool. Just a ton of great detail on that face, sculpt-wise. He's got the little beard going on here. Another row of spikes going up the top of his head. Just beautifully done, and that articulation helps it show off so much more. You open that mouth, and he's got just this rows of nasty fangs. He just is so vicious looking. Very amazing. I cannot say enough about the sculpting work on this figure. And that tongue is also beautifully done, a nice little snake tongue, and it can kind of fit in between the teeth when you shut it. Looks really, really cool. The story behind me getting this figure, I might want to throw in here, is he's been on my Amazon wishlist for a while, ever since I saw him. He's been a figure that I've wanted to get my hands on, him and the Godzilla particularly, and then a lot of the rest of this line just because I love Godzilla. And for Christmas, my girlfriend's mother gave both of us some money to spend on Amazon, and it was enough that I was thinking maybe I could actually pull off another Hot Toy with it, which would have been cool. And I was looking at Amazon's prices on Hot Toys are just very high, and there was nothing I really wanted for what I was going to spend extra. Then I realized for the amount I had, I could actually pick up this guy and Godzilla, so that's what I chose to do. And I really think I made the right choice because these guys are like the Hot Toys of Godzilla figures. They're obviously not 6th scale, because 6th scale would be huge. They're a much smaller figure than a Hot Toy, but you add the wings in, he's almost as tall as some Hot Toys. He's enormous, he's well detailed to a massive extreme, he has beautiful articulation even though it's a little problematic. Just crazy amounts of detail in this guy. And I love it. But we're not done. There is more stuff that comes with King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah also comes with this stand here, and this isn't a stand for the character. The character will not actually go on it anyway. There's no pegs coming up. But what we have is 3 holes on it. We also get these little arms, which are really cool, and we have enough articulation on the character. These add extra articulation to the figure's count. They peg right into the base here, so you go 1, 2, and 3. And then each of them can now swivel where they're pegged in. They hinge at the bottom. They hinge at the middle. They hinge at the top. And they will also rotate up here at this clip, which was a separate piece. You also can remove this clip. And he comes with 3 extenders, which you could pop in here. And then you can put the clip back on the end. Now I'm being very careful with these because clear plastic kind of has a reputation for being a little flimsy, and I do not want to break this in the least. But now you have this little stand, clear, as unnoticeable as possible for plastic. And then, well, what do you do with this? King Ghidorah also comes with these 3 gravity beams that he shoots out of his mouth in the movie. These are all this translucent yellow plastic. They kind of have this cool look where they're actually like arcing like lightning. Really nice looking, really well done. Good representation of it. This is the end that would be the business end, the attacking end. This end's kind of tapered off. It goes in his mouth. And while they are predominantly yellow, there are some orange hues. Some of them more than others, like this one here. It might be hard to pick up on camera, especially because it's translucent. But it actually is a little more orange than the other ones. Probably just a paint defect or a paint variation that happened in the factory, but it kind of looks cool that they varied it up. So you take your cradle, and while it doesn't hold it particularly tight, you could actually rest the beams in these cradles. And then I'll just skip ahead and show you what it looks like all set up. And here we go. It took a long time to actually get him set up, and unfortunately I can't get the camera far enough away from him to really show off how cool this is. But here is the overall effect of it. It's just a really cool representation of King Ghidorah's blasts. Now, of course, you are going to have this clear plastic stand sitting in front of him, so it's a little distracting, but if you just want to pay attention to the character itself and the beams, and they kind of do command more attention, it's just really neat looking. It's a cool way to display this character, and I love the arms and the way you could have them at different lengths and heights. Allows you to have different angles. If you can see, I actually have this head aiming this way. The center head is aiming towards the back wall there, while the right head of King Ghidorah here is actually shooting more this way. And this head's just kind of shooting forward. So it gives him the ability to even target 3 opponents at once. If you had a few different Godzilla figures, you could have them all being attacked by Ghidorah at the same time, which I think could be a really cool visual effect for this character. Now, I must say this is a huge pain in the butt to set up because these beams do not clip into this holster. They simply rest on it. The term cradle was very deliberate because it really does just cradle them gently. And then the end part, the kind of tapered down part, doesn't peg into the mouth or anything. And you really can't close the jaw on it because it doesn't look right for the character's beam effect. And it's just really hard to get it lined up with the center of his throat and then get it to balance in that cradle at the same time, let alone to do 3 of them and have the 3 different effects going 3 different ways. You can't move the cradle, you can't move the creature, you have to keep everything as stationary as possible, and it is a bit trying. However, I think when you get it the way you want it, it is a beautiful effect and incredibly cool. And I can't wait to play around with it more and get a great setup going with these characters. For one last comparison on him, I bring in the SH Monsterarts Godzilla, and you can see they are really truly to scale with each other. Now remember, King Ghidorah was a man in a suit. Both these characters were portrayed by men in suits. So they both have to conform to human proportions. So Godzilla, you have a man, his feet are at the feet, and his head is at the neck. They saw through the neck and had the monster's head actually on top of theirs as a remote-controlled piece or a cable-controlled piece. And King Ghidorah would have been the feet of the human inside the feet of the monster's suit, and he would have just come up to where the heads start. So it is the height of a man, basically, in this scale, up until where the heads start. So it is a really incredible feat to see this scale brought together. And it's why Ghidorah is so much more expensive than Godzilla, because he is to scale. And that's something I don't believe we even got close to in any other toy line I've ever seen for Godzilla. You have to combine 2 different scale toys or something to get this effect before. But now we have 2 characters in the same line that match. So overall, I cannot recommend this figure higher to Godzilla fans. Now, some of the other vinyl creatures and stuff I could recommend to fans who love them, who want different versions, but this thing is the ultimate. Like I said before, it's like the Hot Toys of monster figures. The coolest kaiju figures we've ever seen, right here. Incredible, incredible stuff. Despite the fragileness, despite the heads popping off, despite how much of a pain in the butt these gravity beams were to get to work and be in one place, it's so cool, so amazing. Everything good about this figure outweighs any complaints I could come up with, which is all you can ask for out of a cool action figure like this. And if you're into doing stop motions, and I'm not personally, but if you were going to do Godzilla-themed stop motions, the amount of articulation, the amount that it's hidden, and you can kind of hide it in these figures, you could do so much with these guys. You can make a brilliant stop motion with these figures and have it look as close to seamless as I think possible. It could be a lot of fun. So definitely highly recommend King Ghidorah, and I will have to do the Godzilla review soon because he's a whole nother bag of awesome. The best part is the SH Monsterarts line seems like it's going to keep on trucking and keep on putting out cool figures. They've done a bunch of iconic figures from the 90s Godzilla era, which is known to fans as the Heisei era. They've done almost every creature. I think they're still missing the Mothra and Batra figures. They've shown off prototypes for a Biollante figure, which is really cool looking. And they've got almost every character made from that series of movies. Hopefully they'll go back and do some of the 70s or go do some of the newer Millennium things. I'd love to see them continue to put this level of detail and keep releasing more and more figures. And I already know I'm going to have to get more because these are just too awesome. And I think they're like the potato chips of action figures. I don't think a couple are ever going to be enough. I need more and more and more now, which is horrible because this is incredibly addictive. Oh well. Such is the life of a collector, I guess. And if you want more insight into the life of a collector, see that segue there? You can check out Outside the Box reviews on Facebook. I'll put a link below. I posted pictures of these guys when I got them. I talked about when I ordered them. I've been so excited to get these guys, so you can see what other things I'm excited to get, what other things I'm ordering, what else I've gotten in before I have a chance to get reviews up of them. So check it out there, and if you have any questions or comments or whatever, always good to start discussions on there. We could have some fun talking toys. And until next time, this has been another Outside the Box review. Stay tuned for more giant monsters and other stuff to come.